Wife had 2 affairs and she's mad because I moved on with my life for another woman. I never expected to be posting this story. But then, I never expected my wife of 13 years to have 2 separate affairs and then have the audacity to be furious that I finally found happiness with someone else. She's currently blowing up my phone, telling our friends and family that I'm betraying her by replacing her so easily. Apparently, I was supposed to wait indefinitely while she figured things out, despite the fact that she's currently living with the second affair partner. The hypocrisy is staggering, and I'm caught between feeling vindicated that I've finally moved on and guilty that I didn't try harder to save our marriage. Am I wrong for finally finding happiness after 2 years of hell? My wife Sarah, 39F, and I, 41M, met in our mid-20s and married after 3 years together. For a decade, I thought we had a good marriage, not perfect, but solid. We built a life together in our small suburban home, both working professional jobs. I'm an engineer, she's in marketing. We chose not to have children, focusing instead on our careers and traveling whenever we could. We had the same group of friends, shared hobbies, and generally enjoyed each other's company. Or so I thought. The first sign that something was off came about 3 years ago. Sarah became increasingly protective of her phone, started working late more often, and seemed distant. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd insist she was just stressed about work. I believed her because I trusted her completely. Then came the day I'll never forget. I was using her laptop to print some documents for taxes, with her permission, when a message notification popped up. It was from someone named Michael. Can't wait to see you tonight. Hotel is booked. My stomach dropped. I'd never snooped through Sarah's messages before, but in that moment, my instinct took over. What I found was devastating: months of explicit messages between her and Michael, a colleague from work, detailing their affair and how careful they were being not to get caught. When I confronted Sarah that evening, she initially denied everything. Then, seeing the evidence I had, she broke down crying and admitted to a 6-month affair. She swore it was over, the messages suggested otherwise, and begged for another chance. She claimed it was just physical and meant nothing to her. How could it mean nothing if you've been doing this for 6 months? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I felt hollowed out, like someone had scooped out my insides and left a shell. I don't know, she sobbed. I was stupid. It was exciting at first, but I realized I was risking everything that matters to me. You matter to me, Alex. Our life together matters. Please don't throw it all away. After weeks of agonizing, I agreed to try couples counseling. I loved her, and despite the betrayal, I couldn't imagine my life without her. We spent months in therapy, with Sarah seemingly committed to rebuilding trust. She quit her job to avoid contact with Michael, started being more transparent about her whereabouts, and seemed genuinely remorseful. For about a year, I thought we were healing. It wasn't easy. I had nightmares, panic attacks when she was late coming home, and constant intrusive thoughts. But I was trying. We both were, or at least I believed we were. We established new routines together. Friday night became date night, where we'd try new restaurants or just cook at home with a good bottle of wine. We took up hiking, spending weekends exploring trails neither of us had bothered with before. We even booked a 2-week trip to Portugal, something we'd talked about for years but never prioritized. It felt like we were rediscovering each other, like maybe the affair had been a terrible mistake that ultimately forced us to appreciate what we had. Then, 18 months after discovering the first affair, I got a call from James, the husband of Sarah's close friend Laura. He asked if we could meet for a drink urgently. My mind immediately went to a health crisis or some other emergency. I wasn't prepared for what he told me. I think our spouses are having an affair, he said, sliding his phone across the table to show me text messages between Laura and Sarah discussing their cover story for a weekend away. According to James, Sarah and Laura had told us they were going to a girls' spa weekend, but in reality, Sarah was meeting someone named David, and Laura was covering for her. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Again, the second betrayal was somehow worse than the first. This wasn't a momentary lapse or a purely physical affair. This was calculated deception, using her friend to create alibis, all while we were supposedly rebuilding our marriage. When I confronted Sarah this time, her response was different. Rather than denial followed by tearful apologies, she became defensive and angry. What did you expect? She snapped. You've been checking my phone, questioning my every move. I feel suffocated. You never really forgave me. I was stunned. You're blaming me for your second affair? While we're in marriage counseling for your first affair. I'm not happy, Alex. I haven't been for a long time. David understands me in a way you never have. It was like being underwater, hearing her voice distorted and far away as she explained that she needed space to figure things out. She packed a bag that night and went to Laura's, though I later learned she moved in with David within a week. For the next 6 months, I was in a state of emotional paralysis. Sarah would contact me sporadically, usually when things with David hit a rough patch. She'd say she missed me, that she was confused, that maybe we should try again. Each time, I'd feel a surge of hope followed by crushing disappointment when she'd retreat again without any real commitment to reconciliation. The lowest point came during a phone call 3 months after she moved out. She called me at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, crying so hard I could barely understand her. "I miss you so much," she said. "I miss our home, our life. I made such a terrible mistake." "Which one?" I asked, not bothering to hide the bitterness in my voice. "All of it. The affairs, leaving. David isn't who I thought he was. He doesn't really care about me." Part of me, a larger part than I'd like to admit, wanted to rush over, bring her home, and pretend none of this had happened. But another part, the part that was slowly growing stronger, recognized the pattern. She wasn't coming back because she truly wanted our marriage. She was looking for a safety net because her new relationship was failing. "I think you need to figure out what you want, Sarah. Not just when things are bad with David, but what you really want long term." She promised to do some soul searching, to go to individual therapy, to prove she was serious this time. A week later, I saw a social media post from one of our mutual friends, Sarah and David at a concert, her smiling up at him adoringly. So much for soul searching. Friends encouraged me to file for divorce, but I kept hesitating. 13 years of marriage isn't easy to walk away from, even after multiple betrayals. Was I being a fool? Probably. But I wasn't ready to completely let go. At night, alone in the house we'd shared, I'd find myself cycling through memories, trying to pinpoint where things went wrong. Was I too absorbed in my career? Did I miss signs that she was unhappy? Should I have been more romantic, more attentive? The questions would keep me awake until the early hours, leading to exhausted days where I was just going through the motions at work, at home, in life. What kind of person stays after one affair, let alone two? What kind of person was I becoming? So desperate to save something that clearly couldn't be saved. I didn't recognize myself anymore, and that scared me almost as much as losing my marriage. 8 months after Sarah moved out, I finally took my colleague Tom's advice to try rock climbing at the local gym. He'd been suggesting it for months as a way to get out of my head, but I'd resisted. The idea of learning something new when I could barely manage daily life seemed overwhelming. But after a particularly rough weekend where Sarah had called, made vague promises, then gone radio silent again, I decided I needed something, anything, to break the cycle. The climbing gym was busy that Tuesday evening, full of people who clearly knew what they were doing. I stood awkwardly at the entrance, self-conscious and considering leaving, when a woman approached me. First time, she asked with a warm smile. She was about my age, athletic but not intimidatingly so, with bright blue eyes and curly hair pulled back in a ponytail. "Is it that obvious?" I attempted a laugh. "Only to the trained eye. I'm Megan, one of the instructors. Want me to show you the basics?" What followed was a surprisingly enjoyable hour of learning how to put on a harness, basic climbing techniques, and the importance of trust between climber and belayer. Megan was patient and encouraging, never making me feel like the middle-aged novice I clearly was. When I finally reached the top of the easiest climbing route, the sense of accomplishment was the first positive emotion I'd felt in months. "Not bad at all for a first-timer," she said as I returned to solid ground. "You coming back next week?" I found myself saying yes before I'd even thought about it. Rock climbing became my Tuesday ritual. Megan was usually there, sometimes as my instructor, eventually as a climbing partner. After sessions, a group of regulars would often grab coffee at the cafe next door, and I started joining them. It was refreshing to talk about something other than my imploding marriage, climbing techniques, upcoming competitions, the best hiking trails in the area. Gradually, those coffee meetings became the brightest part of my week. Megan was easy to talk to, passionate about her interests, and genuinely kind. Our conversations eventually extended beyond climbing. I learned she was a physical therapist by day, climbing instructor by night. She loved science fiction novels, had lived in 3 countries, and made excellent homemade pizza. When the group thinned out, sometimes it would just be the two of us, talking until the cafe staff began stacking chairs. It took 6 weeks before I mentioned my situation, and even then, it was only because she'd asked if I'd like to join a weekend climbing trip, and I needed to explain why my schedule was uncertain. "I'm technically still married," I said, the words feeling strange on my tongue. "My wife is, well, she's living with someone else after having an affair. Actually, 2 affairs. But we're in this weird limbo where she sometimes talks about reconciling. It's complicated." I expected her to run for the hills. Instead, she nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds incredibly difficult," she said. "I went through a divorce 3 years ago. Different circumstances, but I understand the limbo part. It's like you can't fully grieve or move on because there's still this open door. Her understanding was like a key unlocking something in me. Over the next few weeks, I found myself sharing more, not in a dwelling, self-pitying way, but in the natural course of getting to know someone. Megan listened without judgment and shared parts of her own story in return. We became friends, real friends, outside the climbing gym. We went hiking one Sunday when Sarah had canceled yet another Let's Talk meeting. We saw a movie during a rainstorm that had derailed a planned climbing session. We were just friends, and that friendship was uncomplicated in a way nothing in my life had been for years. 3 months into this friendship, Sarah called with news. She and David had gotten engaged. She wanted to do things properly, which meant finalizing our divorce. I was surprised by my own reaction, not devastation, but relief. The decision had finally been made, and not by me. The limbo was ending. I told Megan about it during our next coffee meeting. I should be upset, right? 13 years of marriage, and I feel relieved it's ending. She considered this, stirring her tea. Maybe relief is the appropriate response to certainty after so much uncertainty. It doesn't mean those years didn't matter. Something shifted between us that day. Perhaps it was the realization that I was truly becoming available, emotionally and legally. Perhaps it was just the natural evolution of feelings that had been developing unacknowledged. We talked longer than usual, and when we left the cafe, she hugged me goodbye, our first physical contact outside of climbing safety checks. 2 weeks later, Sarah called again. The engagement was off. David had been talking to other women, and she was devastated. Couldn't I see that we were meant to be together? That these other relationships had just been detours on our path back to each other? For the first time, I felt nothing, no hope, no disappointment, just a clear-eyed recognition of the pattern. I think we should move forward with the divorce, I said calmly. I wish you well, Sarah, but I don't see a future for us anymore. That weekend, Megan and I went hiking in a nearby state park. At the summit, overlooking the valley below, I told her about my conversation with Sarah. I'm proud of you, she said simply. That couldn't have been easy. Actually, it was. That's the surprising part. I turned to face her, suddenly nervous in a way I hadn't been in decades. I think I'm ready to move forward. And I'd like to move forward with you, if you're interested. Her smile was answer enough, but her words made it official. I'd like that very much. Our first real date was dinner at a small Italian restaurant. It felt simultaneously new and familiar, the nervousness of beginning something, coupled with the ease of conversation we'd developed over months of friendship. When I walked her to her car and she kissed me goodnight, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. 2 weeks after Megan and I started dating, Sarah called to say she and David had hit another rough patch and she was thinking about us again. When I told her I had started seeing someone, her reaction was explosive. How could you do this to me? She demanded. After everything we've been through? I was speechless. Sarah, you've had 2 affairs and you're living with the second guy. What did you expect me to do? I expected you to fight for our marriage. To wait for me to figure things out. It's been 2 years since your first affair, and you're still figuring things out with another man. I've waited long enough. She hung up on me, and that's when the harassment started. She's called me selfish, accused me of never truly loving her, and told mutual friends that I replaced her the first chance I got. Some friends have sided with her, suggesting I should have given the marriage more time. Others think I've waited far too long to move on already. The hypocrisy is staggering. The woman who betrayed me twice, who is living with another man, feels betrayed because I've started dating someone else after 2 years of emotional purgatory. Am I missing something? Is there some unwritten rule that the faithful spouse must remain in perpetual waiting mode while the unfaithful one figures things out? Megan has been understanding about the drama, but I worry it's too much to ask of a new relationship. Last night, after Sarah had called both my sister and my best friend to complain about my betrayal, I asked Megan if she was having second thoughts. About you? Not at all, she said firmly. About Sarah's ability to make our lives complicated? Maybe a little, but I've dealt with worse, and you're worth it. For the first time in years, I feel like myself again, not the shell of a person I became during Sarah's affairs and our separation, but someone with hopes and interests in the future. Is it wrong to embrace that feeling? Am I the bad guy for finally choosing my own happiness? Update: 1 month. It's been a month since my last post, and things have escalated in ways I never expected. Shortly after I wrote about Sarah's reaction to my new relationship, she showed up at my house unannounced, clearly intoxicated, demanding to talk. It was nearly midnight, and I had an early meeting the next day, but I let her in, worried about her driving in that state. What followed was an hour of emotional whiplash. She oscillated between tearful declarations that she still loved me and wanted to come home, and bitter accusations that I had given up too easily on our marriage. When I reminded her that she was the one who had 2 affairs and moved out, she dismissed it with a wave of her hand. People make mistakes, Alex. Marriage is about forgiveness. I would have forgiven you if the situation was reversed. The statement was so absurd I almost laughed. Sarah, you didn't even give me anything to forgive. I was faithful for 13 years. Her response stunned me. Well, maybe that was the problem. Maybe things got too predictable, too safe. You never took risks. Being faithful isn't playing it safe. It's honoring your commitment. I was suddenly exhausted by the conversation, by the years of emotional manipulation. It's late, and you're drunk. You should call a cab. That's when she noticed a woman's scarf draped over the back of my couch. Megan had forgotten it the day before when we'd gone hiking and stopped by my place afterward. Sarah snatched it up, her face contorting with rage. She's been here? In our home. It's my home now, Sarah. You moved out, remember? What happened next still haunts me. She began methodically going through the house, searching for signs of Megan, growing increasingly agitated. In the bathroom, she found Megan's toothbrush she stays over occasionally, and threw it against the wall. In the bedroom, she stripped the comforter off the bed, saying she couldn't stand the thought of me with someone else in our bed. I tried to calm her down, but she was beyond reason. She grabbed a framed photo of us from our honeymoon, one of the few mementos I'd kept displayed, and smashed it on the floor. Then she collapsed in tears among the shattered glass. I called Laura, who was surprisingly apologetic, and came immediately to pick Sarah up. As they were leaving, Sarah turned to me, suddenly calm. You'll regret this. She'll never know you like I do. The encounter left me shaken. This wasn't the Sarah I'd known for 13 years, or maybe it was, and I'd just never seen this side of her. Either way, I changed my locks the next day. The aftermath has rippled through our social circle. Some friends who had initially taken Sarah's side reached out to apologize after hearing about her behavior. Others have doubled down, suggesting I provoked her by flaunting my new relationship. I hadn't, Megan, and I have been intentionally low-key. Sarah's family, with whom I've always been close, is divided. Her sister called to say she was disappointed in me, while her brother sent a supportive text saying, I love my sister, but she made her choices. You deserve to be happy too. Through all this chaos, Megan has been remarkably patient. When I told her what happened, she was concerned rather than scared off. Do you need some space to sort things out? She asked. I'm here either way. Her understanding only confirmed what I'd been feeling, that this relationship, though new, is healthier than anything I'd experienced in years with Sarah. There's a mutual respect that I now realize was missing in my marriage long before any affairs. I finally contacted a divorce lawyer. For months, I'd held off, part of me still hoping for reconciliation despite all evidence that it would be a mistake. But Sarah's behavior that night was the wake-up call I needed. The divorce will be relatively straightforward since we have no children and kept most of our finances separate, but I'm still dreading the process. Last weekend, Megan and I went camping in the mountains, deliberately choosing a spot with no cell reception. For 2 days, we hiked, cooked over a campfire, and talked about everything and nothing. It was the first time since Sarah's meltdown that I felt completely present, not constantly checking my phone for crisis updates or worried about what Sarah might do next. On our last night, sitting by the fire, Megan asked me a question that's been echoing in my mind ever since. What do you want your life to look like a year from now? Not what should I do about Sarah? Not how to manage the divorce, but what do I actually want for myself? I realized I've been so consumed with reacting to Sarah's behavior, with the logistics of ending a marriage, with others' expectations, that I'd lost sight of my own desires. The question felt like permission to imagine a future based on my own happiness, not just the least painful exit strategy. I want peace, I said finally, and the freedom to build something authentic with someone who respects me. I want to trust again without always waiting for the other shoe to drop. She nodded, adding another log to the fire. Those sound like good ones to me. The hardest part has been letting go of the future I'd imagined, the growing old together, the retirement plans we'd discussed, the shared history that now feels tainted. Some nights I still wake up reaching for someone who isn't there, momentarily forgetting everything that's happened. But then I remember the look of pure rage on Sarah's face as she destroyed our honeymoon photo, and I know I'm making the right decision. You can't build a future with someone who's willing to break everything when they don't get their way. Update. 1 year. It's been a full year since my first post, and almost 2 years since discovering Sarah's second affair. I'm writing this final update from the small cabin Megan and I rented for the weekend to celebrate our 1-year anniversary. She's currently hiking a nearby trail while I take some time to reflect, one of the many ways we've learned to balance togetherness and independence. The divorce was finalized 8 months ago, faster than expected due to Sarah's sudden agreement to my proposed terms. According to her lawyer, she wanted to move on quickly, which was a surprising but welcome change from her previous stance. I later learned from a mutual friend that Sarah and David had broken up spectacularly after he discovered she was still contacting me and suggesting reconciliation. Apparently, history repeats itself. She expected him to fight for her, while she figured things out. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Sarah requested to meet for coffee, supposedly to return some of my belongings she'd found while moving out of David's place. Reluctantly, I agreed, choosing a public cafe during daylight hours to avoid a repeat of her previous meltdown. She looked different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes, but also somehow more put together, as if she was trying extra hard to present a certain image. She placed a small box on the table, cufflinks my grandfather had given me, a few books, old concert tickets we'd saved. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began. "A lot of therapy, too. I'm starting to understand why I did what I did." I nodded but said nothing. I'd heard versions of this before, and I wasn't interested in another round of explanations that inevitably blamed our marriage rather than her choices. "I think I've always been afraid of being truly seen," she continued. "When things got too comfortable with us, I panicked. With Michael, and then with David, there was this excitement of being someone new, someone unknown." "Sarah," I started, but she held up her hand. "Please, let me finish. I'm not asking for another chance. I know that's not possible now." She glanced down at the table. "I've heard you and Megan are getting serious." "We are," I confirmed. Sarah took a deep breath. "I want you to know I'm sorry. Truly sorry, not just for the affairs, but for how I reacted when you started dating. It was hypocritical and unfair." She paused. "I think I always expected you to be there, waiting, regardless of how I treated you. When you weren't, it forced me to face some ugly truths about myself." Her eyes filled with tears. "I think I had it and didn't recognize it until it was gone." She gathered her purse and stood. "Be happy, Alex. She seems like she makes you happy." As I watched her walk away, I felt an unexpected sense of closure. No anger, no lingering desire, just a quiet acknowledgement that a significant chapter of my life was truly finished. Megan moved in 4 months ago. It felt simultaneously monumental and completely natural. The house that once felt haunted by memories of my failed marriage now feels like a new home. We've repainted every room, replaced the furniture that Sarah damaged during her meltdown, and converted the formal dining room we never used into a home gym with a small climbing wall. Life has settled into a new normal that would have been unimaginable to me at my lowest point. We've had our disagreements. We're both opinionated people with distinct perspectives, but we address conflicts directly instead of letting resentments fester. The contrast with my marriage is stark and educational. With Sarah, I was constantly trying to anticipate her reactions, walking on eggshells to avoid triggering her insecurities. With Megan, I can simply be myself. Sarah has largely faded from my life, though I hear occasional updates through mutual friends. She moved to another city 6 months ago for a job opportunity, which has made the separation cleaner and easier for both of us. According to those who keep in touch with her, she's single and focusing on her career and personal growth. I genuinely hope she's finding peace. The question I'm asked most often, usually by well-meaning friends who witnessed the collapse of my marriage, is whether I trust Megan completely, given my history. The answer isn't simple. Trust, I've learned, isn't binary. It's built gradually through consistent actions over time. I'm more attuned to potential warning signs now, more willing to address concerns directly, and more confident in my ability to survive if the worst happened again. That said, I refuse to punish Megan for Sarah's actions. Hypervigilance and suspicion would poison what we're building, and Megan deserves better than to be viewed through the lens of my previous relationship. We've established healthy boundaries and open communication that allow trust to flourish without blind faith. I've come to accept that both Sarah and I contributed to the dysfunction in our marriage, but her choices to have affairs rather than address problems directly were hers alone. And my decision to eventually move forward with someone who shares my values around honesty and commitment was not a betrayal but an act of self-preservation. For those who find themselves in similar situations, discovering a partner's infidelity, especially repeated infidelity, I don't have easy answers. Each relationship is unique, each betrayal has its own context, and each person must find their own path to healing. What I can say with certainty is that you deserve honesty from your partner. You deserve to be someone's choice, not their backup plan. And you deserve the opportunity to find happiness, whether through reconciliation or by building something new with someone else. As for me, I'm looking forward, not back. Megan and I are discussing long-term plans, possibly relocating to be closer to the mountains we both love, potentially starting a family in the next few years if it feels right. These conversations unfold naturally, without the pressure or urgency I once felt about hitting relationship milestones. I hear Megan's footsteps on the cabin porch now, returning from her hike. This seems like the right place to end this chapter of my story, not with dramatic declarations or tidy conclusions, but with the quiet recognition that life continues, hearts heal. And sometimes what feels like an ending is actually the beginning of something better than you imagined possible.